Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. This is a Ukraine war news update, second part thereof, for the 28th of May 2025. And there's quite a lot to talk about. This is a military aid update video. And my goodness, there's a lot going on. Not only have I not done one for 3 days, so this is going to be a rather burgeoning video with lots of updates, but also today has been a huge day with regard to Germany particularly. There's been a meeting with Zelensky and Merz in Germany, I believe, and quite a lot has been promised, and Germany really do appear to be coming up Trump's interesting choice of word. So Zelensky says that Germany is the global leader in supporting Ukraine and the rule-based world order. Wow, this is huge. This is to say Germany are now the biggest supporter formally from Zelensky's point of view, more so than the US as a single country, not a group of countries like Europe was or the EU was in comparison to the US. And even that was, moving more in the EU's favor. But now Germany on its own is the single biggest supporter of Ukraine with military aid. Today, we discuss our joint diplomacy, security and projects. Thank you, Mr. Chancellor, for today's important talks together. We work to bring peace closer and ensure greater safety for our people. Okay, so big news. Well, first of all, we heard that $3 billion, euros of aid was to be given. German Chancellor Merz announced a new military aid package, according to Politico, for Ukraine, worth more than that. Package includes air defense systems, artillery, drones, and other components that will allow Ukraine to strengthen its defense capabilities. The main points of the new aid package says Max 25, 3 IRIS-T systems, and 3 Sky Ranger to strengthen air defense. Those are these turrets, modular possibly, rather than the ones, they could be the ones on the Leopard 1 chassis, but probably the modular ones that fire loads of lead into the air. 10 howitzers, I think that is, surface area missile systems, 20 armoured vehicles, artillery, shells and drones. The total amount will increase to 7 billion euros by 2025. So we hear a number of different claims with the numbers. That was 3 billion. Now we're hearing 5 billion. I'm just going to see what the Sky Ranger is. Sky Ranger 30. Yeah. So there you go. Mobile air defense system from Rheinmetall. Yeah. So there's the the turret there. The Oerlikon Sky Ranger family. And I think it's, yes, that's Sky Ranger 30. Sky Ranger there can be put, I guess, on different, Sky Ranger 35. That's one that's on the Leopard base. But yeah, I guess it can be applied to different systems, but also possibly modular as well. I don't know. There's a modular version of it there. But anyway, let's move on. So that's what we were hearing. Also, German military aid package to Ukraine is expected to include technical components that allow Kyiv to build cruise missiles. That, I think, is significant there. Really significant. Then we hear, no reports here reporting, I don't know what the original news source is, but Germany agrees to provide 5 billion euros in fresh military aid to Ukraine. Defense Ministry announced, according to Bloomberg. Oh, that's Bloomberg. Okay, so different numbers. We had 3 billion, then rising to 7 billion. But here we hear 5 billion. Germany is considering substantial financial support for Ukraine's missile program, aiming to develop domestically produced cruise missiles with a range of up to 2,500 kilometers. That's according to the German tabloid Die Bild. So really significant stuff here. German aid to Ukraine looks at the Politico reporting that Merz will announce a new military aid package. So he says a few words on this. Okay, when it comes to air defense, it's safe to assume that we are at least talking about further IRIS-T SLM fire units and IRIS-T SLS launchers. That's a short-range launcher and a medium-range fire units. It was announced back in April that talks are currently underway regarding the financing of further fire units and launchers when Minister of Defense Boris Pistorius announced the latest package in Brussels, which also included 4 further IRIS-T SLM fire units. And there's more on this in a second, as we are hearing a deal has been done with Deal Defense, but I think that could be the Ukraine is buying that directly off the Germans. Other weapons is, of course, a broad term that can range from heavy weapon systems to firearms. Just a thought from me. After the big words of the past few weeks, Chancellor Merz really needs to lay it on thicker here. Finally, according to Politico, the production of Ukrainian-built cruise missiles is to be supported with technical components. Just for the record, Bild reports this that this is purely financial assistance, i.e. financing the defence industry according to the Danish model. The announcement also matches up with the fact that Spiegel recently reported that German government is working on ways to support the Ukrainian defence industry in the production of far-reaching weapons systems, so it seems to be coming true. A long overdue step should this really happen. However, if Merz decides he decides to indeed finance the production of Ukrainian cruise missiles, I honestly don't see us providing Ukraine with Taurus KEPD 350s. Merz will see this, in my estimation, as a reason to have fulfilled his duty. I would be happy to stand corrected in a few months. So the idea is that, yeah, they might not provide Taurus, but Ukraine the means to build their own kind of Taurus. The Defense Ministry of Germany and Ukraine formalized the following points. Germany is going to fund Ukraine's long-range missile program. Says Tendar, the production capacities in Ukraine have been ready and were lacking only the financing. I reported that this morning. We're going to come on to that in a little bit, where Ukraine is saying they are just lacking $30 billion of funding, and that would sort them out in terms of producing their own stuff. Delivery of the first long-range weapons should arrive at the battlefields in the coming weeks already. Weapon systems have already been introduced to the Ukrainian military, so no additional training is needed. New air defense assets are worth 2.2 billion euros. Primarily firing units and missiles of IRIS-T SLM and IRIS-T SLS will be transferred. Now, I'm not sure about this, because that indicates that there's this is part of a package of assistance to Ukraine, and yet we hear that Germany has signed that's Germany signing a $2.2 billion euro contract with Deal Defense. So actually this is coming from Germany. It's not Ukraine buying it from Deal themselves to supply Ukraine with RST air defense systems and missiles. The deal announced during Zelensky's Berlin visit is part of a wider 5 billion euro German military aid package. So that is part of the German aid. Financing of satellite communication devices for the military leadership, and artillery ammunition and medical supplies are also included. So pretty far ranging. Chancellor Merz said in reference to the military assistance, quote, "I will not disclose any details, but what I can tell is that Germany will extend its commitment in this field. Additionally, I informed something new. Germany will sign a memorandum which will include the financing of a Ukrainian long-range weapon program. This also includes joint production. It will be a new cornerstone for military-industrial cooperation between Germany and Ukraine. The financing will come also from interest of frozen Russian assets, which are around $50 billion. Additionally, the German budget will also be used. It is necessary to ensure a maximum in efficiency. Germany will finance a substantial portion of the Starlink coverage." That's interesting as well. That's the satellite communications there. Okay, now on the eve of Zelensky's visit, so last night, Rheinmetall showed how it manufactures shells for Ukraine. Rheinmetall's largest manufacturing facility, located in Unterlüß, is the centre of European defence production. The plant, with a staff of 2,800 employees, produces a wide range of ammunition, from 155mm artillery shells and 120mm tank shells to the 35mm Gepard ammunition. Barrels for Leopard tanks and Panzer Howitzer 2000s are also produced. It appears there, so you can go and check that video out. There's another 1 minute 50 of it. It will be linked in the description to the video, to my video below. And then German aid to Ukraine adds this onto German news. So since Rheinmetall has contractually guaranteed never to transfer the Leopard 1A5 main battle tanks, their components or accessories to Ukraine, the Swiss company RUAG, which still has 96 Leopard 1A5 main battle tanks in a warehouse in Italy, is allowed to sell them to Rheinmetall. So in other words, Rheinmetall are going to buy, it seems, 96 Leopard 1A5s from Switzerland, but they promise not to sell them or any of their components to Ukraine. So Rheinmetall will therefore apparently soon buy 71 Leopard 1A5s and have an option to buy the further 25 as soon as their ownership has been clarified. There have already been legal disputes with another German company about these 25 Leopard 1 main battle tanks for some time now. Still not known what Rheinmetall intends to do with up to 96 Leopard 1 tanks if even the transfer of individual parts of these tanks to Ukraine is prohibited. Maybe they can provide them to Greece, and then Greece can give theirs to Ukraine or something like that. But that's good news possibly for Ukraine, maybe, that Germany, that Rheinmetall are getting hold of those tanks from Switzerland. Okay, now Zelensky says Ukraine needs $30 billion this year to ramp up arms production and hold the line against Russia. We're not at full capacity, he says. It's not a production issue, it's a funding issue. He's urging G7 to step up and wants to use frozen Russian assets to help finance the industrial capacity in Ukraine. Okay. A record 81% of Europeans support common defence policy amid the Ukraine war. Trust in the European Union has reached its highest point in 18 years. This is fascinating. A fascinating survey here. A poll shows that 59% of EU citizens support the purchase and supply of weapons for Ukraine. So still there's a good appetite for support of Ukraine from within the EU and a common defence policy there, including supporting Ukraine. Now, the MOD of Ukraine, the Ministry of Strategic Industries and the UK MOD have signed a project agreement on the use of excess profits from frozen Russian assets within the framework of ERA initiative. So that is, I think, expediting, as far as I understand this, a further $3 billion in 2025 to 2026 from the UK using frozen Russian assets, profits, underwriting, I guess, loans here. The funds will be used for procurement of foreign-made defence products. I don't know if that means foreign to Ukraine, therefore possibly British, but then I don't know. Repair and maintenance of military equipment and the implementation of joint projects. So again, hopefully more money coming Ukraine's way that can be used to support their war effort. Now, the German Chancellor Merz has said, I should have included this in the German section earlier, but this is something I reported earlier today, that there are no longer any restrictions on the range of weapons delivered to Ukraine, neither by the UK, France or Germany. There are no restrictions by the US either. Now, some people are going, oh, this is brilliant, they're going to send Taurus. Some people are claiming they already have sent Taurus. Germany have now been, even though they've announced quite a bit today, they have changed the way they report military aid, so it's not presented on the government website. So it does mean that kind of it's easier for them to deliver Taurus to Ukraine without anyone really knowing, I guess, until they're used. And then you might think that this is a precursor to Taurus going to Ukraine, but this is just actually a general reflection of a position that's actually been in place for some time now. There have been no restrictions for a wee bit of time. The more cynical analysts are saying, well, this is merely an announcement that comes after Ukraine has run out of these kind of weapons that those countries aren't giving. So they aren't giving Taurus, they aren't giving Storm Shadow and Scalp because they've kind of run out of them. They aren't giving long-range American weapons like ATACMS. And so it's kind of easy to announce that there are no restrictions when you don't have any weapons to fire. So, you know, it could be read in several different ways. Previously, Ukraine could use Western long-range weapons for strikes only on occupied Ukrainian territories, but then we already saw like ATACMS be used deeper into Russian territory, and we have seen Storm Shadows used inside Russia as well. Okay, tomorrow, so that's today, the Netherlands will send the last of, actually no, that was the 26th, it's a few days old, sorry. The Netherlands will send, so they have sent the last of the 24 promised F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine, the Dutch Defence Minister has said. So that's brilliant that they've received 24 F-16s from the Netherlands. Fantastic there. And they've completed a final F-16 fighter jet deliveries to Ukraine. In fact, I think the defence minister oversaw them flying from the Netherlands, possibly. Defence Minister Ruben Brekelmans said the 24 donated jets are of vital importance to Ukraine against daily Russian air attacks and have already saved lives by intercepting cruise missiles and drones. So that's really good news. Now, Sweden is allocating an additional 443 million euros in military aid to Ukraine. The government has announced the funds will support various coalitions and initiatives, including 92 million euros for Ukraine's defence industry under the Danish model. So that is good news. Thank you Sweden. Now, the EU may buy US weapons for Ukraine, according to Bloomberg, amid Trump's reluctance to back Kiev and Europe's limited stockpiles. EU leaders are considering purchasing American arms to supply the Ukrainian military. Of course, they will need Patriot systems and Patriot interceptors as a starter. It could be that ATACMS might end up being ordered, or HIMARS munitions, the shorter range ones. European leaders are racing to figure out how to keep Ukraine supplied with weapons, as Trump appears to be walking away from the war. One option, as again, this is the same Bloomberg article, is to buy American. The idea is if Trump refuses to send US weapons to Ukraine, then Europe will. Now, Latvia's Defence Minister Spruds has announced that Latvia is sending an additional 1,500 combat drones to Ukraine. This is part of a broader commitment, with 2 Latvian companies set to deliver a total of 12,000 drones in the first half of 2025 under the International Drone Coalition initiative. Excellent. Don't know what drones they will be, whether they're just general Mavic style drones or something more militarily specific. Czechia has partially localized serial production of the Caesar 8x8 155mm self-propelled gun, and that will commence in June more formally. Excalibur Army, they're the ones who have been upgrading T-72 tanks actually in Czechia for the Ukrainians, will be responsible for the final assembly of the vehicles, with Retia providing communication equipment and parts of the FCS, and Tatra providing the chassis. In total, 62 SPGs will be produced for the Czech military to replace its legacy Soviet self-propelled guns. I hope that those Soviet self-propelled guns could end up going to Ukraine from Czechia. There's a bit of a problem with Czechia, is that they're new. Is it the presidential elections? No, it's a new, I think, general election. It's looking like one of the parties that is most in the driving seat at the moment are an anti-Ukraine party. So that is a real challenge in Czechia, I think, going forward. Now, staying on the Caesar self-propelled gun, since April 2023, the 19 Caesar 8x8s delivered by Denmark to Ukraine have fired more than 40,000 shells. Someone else can do the maths on how many per unit that would be. Now, Zelensky today at the command headquarters, so not today, this is the 26th of May, a couple of days ago, ordered increased funding for interceptor drones, so drones that are used to take out Shahed drones, Ukrainian built interceptor drones, and he's allocated separate financing for Ukraine's ballistic missile program. So this is Zelensky formally accepting that the two main, or two at least significant priorities for Ukraine, are intercepting Shahed drones and doing that with drones, and also getting their ballistic missile program up and running. Now, we have heard that Germany is going to support cruise missile production, so this is exactly what you want, but it's a couple of years behind where I'd like it to be. We were talking about this several years ago, really, that Ukraine, the way I've long said, the way Ukraine win a war against Russia militarily is to do it from distance using drones. Yeah, and they're doing their very best with your short-range drones. They're upping their construction of medium-range reconnaissance drones and hopefully strike drones as well. And then they need the long-range drones, which they're also ramping up the production of. And then it's cruise missiles and ballistic missiles. We are hearing about sort of missile drones, a kind of hybrid between drone and cruise missile, I guess. They need a real scaled production of all sorts of long-range missiles, as far as I'm concerned. Right, Russian blogger Zhivov has admired the Ukrainian distributed digital system of 3D printing for military components. Quote, "Our enemy," the Ukrainians therefore, "has created a unique distributed production cluster in which there is a place for every household in Ukraine. By the way, this is real digitalization," he says. If you want to help the army and live off it, no problem. 2 clicks on a website, 3 assembly schemes, 4 boxes with components, and now you're helping the armed forces of Ukraine for your own benefit. Here we see an advanced economic solution with a decentralization of resources and the creation of industrial cooperation networks that are invulnerable to military intervention. In other words, you can't bomb a factory like this. Like, these are houses all around Ukraine that are involved in the construction of, it's like household industries involved in the construction of military equipment. To say this is smart is to say nothing, says this Russian, who's obviously fairly annoyed that Ukrainians are doing it, but the Russians have a very centralized system. At the same time, I understand how our system of production, procurement and delivery of drones to the troops is structured, and I understand that we simply cannot handle this competition with our system. Fundamentally different goal setting. The enemy's war permeates the entire society and territory of the country, and this is me now, which is absolutely understandable because that's a country that's been invaded. Russia hasn't been invaded, so Russian households don't feel the need to get involved in the way that the Ukrainian households do. So that's why there is a very different setup. While for us it ends at the first relatively safe military post, then service and commercial interests begin. So a much more centralized commercial procurement system rather than involving households getting, we've heard previously of drones being manufactured in households, people soldering drones together and then sent off to the front line. Well, actually it goes even deeper than that with there's a whole variety of weapons. Okay, Ukrainian electronic warfare expert Serhiy Beskestnov believes that infantry must stay underground with only robots on the surface. We've talked about this an awful lot, where drones are substituting for humans. We are seeing that in terms of aerial drones being used to defend entire corridors rather than humans in trenches, and that saves lives. And then we're seeing UGVs getting used where sappers would originally have been used, or I guess vehicles with mine laying capabilities with humans driving them. Now we are seeing UGVs doing that, supplying units, doing medevacs, etc., etc. So this guy's saying, infantry must stay underground and only robots should be on the surface. Quote, a conference on ground robots was held in Kiev. Ground robots are my prediction, which did not quite come true. So he predicted this previously, but it's not quite there yet. A year ago, I made predictions that robots would fill the armed forces of Ukraine. Now, I do not change my opinion that this is the future of technological development in the army. The Deputy Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Brigadier General Andriy Lebedenko, also believes the same. Quote, from this Lebedenko, let's think about taking our people from the front line and replacing them with our machines. And back to the main guy. Unfortunately, there are not as many robots for the Armed Forces of Ukraine and the National University as we would like. At the same time, there are over 50 manufacturers, and there are exactly a dozen large and serial ones. What's the reason? The budget of the Ministry of Defence and brigades is not infinite, and when the brigade commander has a choice between buying drones, electronic warfare, or robots, he will choose drones and electronic warfare because he knows what it will give him and how it works. That is, there are no large and stable flow of orders without the purchase of ground drones. That is, without profit, many development teams will disintegrate or have already disintegrated and then have to start all over again. And this goes back to what Zelensky was saying. We need $30 billion because there's plenty of ability to produce this stuff, but there is the demand for it in terms of people want it, the kind of desired demand, but there isn't the demand in terms of money turning into orders. Anyway, back to this source. Therefore, if the brigades are not ready for objective reasons to support the trend of ground robots, the Ministry of Defence should do it now by contracting manufacturers. The topic of communication rests on the issue that I indicated above. Controlling ground robots by analogy with FPV, ELRS, and video in analog is a bad way. Digital mesh solutions and satellite control channels are needed, and they increase the cost of a ground drone, which people don't want to buy anyway because of its price. In closing, I will reiterate that the infantry should stay underground and instead robots should work on the surface, delivering food and ammunition, laying and clearing mines, evacuating the wounded, and bringing electronic warfare equipment to the zero line. Robots should take on maximum risks. And there's nothing I disagree with there. Interesting that they're talking about mesh rather than, I guess, individual like communication from your controller to the UGV. Problem is that preferably you would have line of sight, But for UGVs, it's quite difficult. You end up having like hills get in the way, or trees, or woods, forests, all buildings, all sorts of stuff. Drones, it's slightly easier because they're up above, and so you're generally going to have better line of sight to flying an aerial drone. But your ground vehicles get a lot of interference, so rather have kind of satellite communication to them. So you're bouncing, I guess, your signal up to the satellite, and then that comes down to the drone, and it's much better, but it's going to be more expensive, and that's a problem. So they need the government to step in and fund these orders. Now, I reported this morning a fiber optic drone, supposedly, according to this source, flew 42 kilometers and hit a tank in a hangar. So that's incredible, increasing the range of fiber optics up to 42 kilometers. That's a massive spool to put on a drone. Ukraine has used an AI mothership drone, or the drones, plural, against Russia for the first time, according to Forbes. Now, these are actually fixed-wing drones that have a range of 300 kilometers, payload of 9 kilograms. And as you can see there, you've got a drone on the right-hand wing, and then possibly a munition on the left-hand wing. So this is a reusable Gogol M carrier drone that delivers 2 FPVs to a target. It says 2 FPVs there, but I don't know if that particular one appeared to have 1 FPV and a munition. At a distance of up to 300 kilometers. After the release of the drones, the carrier returns, so it's not used as a repeater, and these FPV drones carry out their attacks guided by AI. So it's kind of plugged in, and that makes them resistant to electronic warfare. So they are not communicating back to base, so you're not interfering with the control of the drones. The drones control themselves, and they obviously have some kind of computing capability on board that allows them to target something on the ground and use AI to just get to that target. So that's fascinating. Now, Ukraine has also developed the Sky Sentinel, which is an AI-powered autonomous air defense turret designed to detect, track and neutralize Russian Shahed drones and missiles. The advanced system operates independently, requiring minimal human intervention, and provides a cost-effective solution to the drone attacks. Now, the key to these kind of solutions will be range. If the drones are now flying at 2 kilometers above ground level, then you need a pretty powerful gun to be able to take that out. So AI-powered turret that hunts Russian missiles and drones. Meet the Sky Sentinel, Ukraine's new air defense. Excellent news that has been developed now, and maybe a little bit more information on it. So Ukraine has created a new weapon against Shahed, says St. Javelin. This is a Sky Sentinel. It's an autonomous AI turret with a Browning M2 heavy machine gun and a 360-degree targeting. So that will not be able to reach 2 kilometers as far as I know, because I've heard crews with Browning machine guns that were previously successful at taking out low-flying drones struggle to take out 2 kilometer drones at 2 kilometer range. But anyway, when they do fly low, then these are going to be really useful, and maybe when they're on their terminal dive, so you could have these around something like, I don't know, for example, air bases, right? Have a bunch of these positioned around air bases where they can hopefully destroy the drones in midair, so that you may get debris on the air bases and whatnot, but actually, you know, you'll be hitting the drone as it comes down and hopefully send it off its targeting route, so it slightly misses, for example. Anyway, trained to ignore birds and only fire at real threats, it can take down targets flying up to 800 kilometers an hour. Wow. So actually, that's also good for your terminal phase drones, that they are flying much quicker, but actually these can hit them. Working with radar, it tracks, locks and fires without human input. Each unit costs around $150,000. Sky Sentinel is already battle tested. It's taken down 4 Shaheds, and mass production is now underway. This is brilliant news for Ukraine, especially when we're hearing, as you're going to hear soon, that the Russians are touted to be able to make 500 Shaheds a day, possibly at some point. At the moment, maybe around 350, which is also 300 to 350 is a huge number already. Now, Timothy Milovanov says Ukraine has a manpower problem, not enough troops, but it won't forcibly draft anyone under 25. We talked about this many times before as to why that is. Demographic black hole, economically disastrous, and possibly in a PR sense suicidal. So economically problematic, and that leaves a real problem for the Ukrainians because they need these people, but these are the people most likely to make babies, get qualifications, so therefore be skilled up for the future economy as well as the present economy, and there's a demographic black hole, so they have fewer of that cohort of people from 18 to 25 than any other cohort. And they also have a birth rate collapse at the moment, so the lowest infancy birth rates in the world are in Ukraine. You've got the highest mortality rates, so highest death rates, lowest birth rates, and they've got a black hole from 18 to 25, which means that if you want to get lots of people to fight for you on the front line, you've got a problem. So there are people clamoring for 18 to 25-year-olds to be mobilized, but I fully understand the reason why they haven't. It's just a dilemma. It's you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. Now, there are some people that very strongly say that it's been suicidal for the Ukrainians not to have mass mobilization across the whole of society. If you do that for the 18 to 25-year-olds, you will lose a lot of people who will flee across the border. And for all the reasons I've already mentioned, it would just be problematic. Instead, the Ukrainians have offered serious money to get them to join. So the Wall Street Journal reports that the new contract for 18 to 24-year-olds offers a $24,000 bonus, $3,000 a month, free tuition, and a no-interest mortgage for a year of service. So it's trying to sweeten the deal, attract them rather than force them. Only around 500 have joined since the launch of this in February. Ukraine is running out of volunteers, and after 3.5 years of war, most willing men are already fighting. Others evade the draft by hiding or fleeing the country. 18-year-old Krylo Horbenko signed up the day he turned 18. In 2023, he and his friends visited a recruitment office at 16. Officials laughed them out. The most later left or lost interest. He waited and joined. Timur Ushak, 16, chose a different path. He's learning Slovak and plans to move to Bratislava in Slovakia next year. If I leave, it's probably for good. I don't believe the war will end, he says. Many in the army resent the perks. Major Yevgeny Hromadsky. So there's a problem. If you're already in the army and kids are getting these, or sorry, not kids, but young men are getting these perks, then that will lead to resentment. Why don't I get that? Hero of Ukraine earned just $290 a month defending Kharkiv in 2022 and lost his father in the same battle. And now recruits are getting 10 times more. Zelensky's refused to lower the conscription age below 25 despite Western pressure. He says the youth is our future and they will be needed to rebuild Ukraine. A contract 18 to 24 is not, so that's the name of this project, is not just about money. It's a test of generational resolve. Some enlist, some just stay, others emigrate. Ukraine's future may depend on which of these choices become the norm. It's a real dilemma. It is difficult, and it's very easy for us to sit back and go, well, you should mobilize 18 to 24-year-olds. It's easy for us outside of the country to say that. But there are so many things to consider here. So I do understand the difficulty there. That said, Russia, according to Zelensky, interesting source here, as in, this is what he is claiming. There could well be some, I don't know, desire to spin maybe here, or this could, you can read it in so many ways when the head of the nation makes big claims on numbers. It could well be more likely to be true. I don't know. 40 to 45,000 troops per month is what apparently Russia is mobilizing, which is a huge number, much higher than we'd seen previously. And that's according to Zelensky. But he says Ukraine is mobilizing 25 to 27,000. As I said this morning, if Ukraine is attriting Russians at a greater ratio than that ratio you see there, then that is good news for Ukraine, which they almost certainly are. But that is a really high mobilization number for Russia, if that is true. 40 to 45,000 is above the present replacement level. So they will be able to either reconstitute and rotate or amass troops because they'll be growing their armed forces. Quote, when the US sends signals that it wants to do something positive with Russia, then Russia ramps up its mobilization, said Zelensky, according to MV News outlet. Now, going on to talk about Russia here, we have Russia aims to produce 500 drones per day, according to Zelensky. I mentioned that. He's saying at the moment, it doesn't say it here, but he said elsewhere that they're producing at the moment 300 to 350, which is a huge number. Zelensky also recalled a recent successful operation by the Ukrainian armed forces, which used 400 small drones, I presume FPV drones, simultaneously and destroyed 40 pieces of Russian military hardware. So that's really interesting to use a coordinated approach to taking out military hardware with a huge number of drones. Interesting, that works out about 10 drones per piece of kit. I don't know what that says particularly. Right, Russia's upgraded ballistic missiles are harder to intercept by Patriots, according to the Ukrainian Air Force. Quote, it complicates the interception, but doesn't make it impossible, said Yuri Ihnat. I think our partners are already working to improve the system's capabilities. So Patriot, one of the best systems in the world, if not clearly the best. There's SAMP-T supposedly can take out ballistic missiles, but the Patriot has had, the PAC-3 variant has had better success, I believe. But it's finding it harder and harder to take out ballistic missiles, so they're working on that. Now we're hearing the SAMP-T NG, the new version of the SAMP-T is due to be out, I think, this year. One assumes that will be even better than the Patriot in taking out ballistic missiles. I would assume that would be the case. Now, China has denied Ukraine's allegations that they are supplying arms and defense components to Russia. I think that's almost certainly the case. China's reaction follows remarks by the head of Ukraine's Foreign Intelligence Service about Beijing allegedly providing defense components to Russian military industrial manufacturing facilities. Yeah, of course they're going to deny that. Now, here is the claim, or another claim. China provides 80% of critical electronics for Russian drones, according to the intelligence agency. Ukraine's intelligence confirmed that 20 Russian factories received Chinese machine tools, special chemicals, gunpowder and components specifically for military enterprises. As I say, completely unsurprising. And then what else do we have here? So, NOL reports reported a day ago that Russia is likely producing more ballistic missiles than the US can supply Patriot interceptors. The Economist says a US factory plans to produce 650 interceptors in 2025, but that is over 100 fewer than the number of ballistic missiles Russia is expected to manufacture. So these claims that Russia is manufacturing all sorts of ballistic missiles. Prune60 here says, remember back when people said that Russia had so much artillery ammunition that Ukraine would never be able to cope? Then what happened? Do you remember? This is just another problem to be solved, not necessarily the end of the game. So, don't get too depressed as to what happened. Artillery ammunition depots were blown up by HIMARS. So you might get, and someone was saying this morning, there's no way that there are rumors that Russia stockpiled 500 ballistic missiles. Someone in the threads is saying that becomes a storage nightmare if you've got that many ballistic missiles just waiting to be blown up. But I don't know, storage locations of these missiles may experience increased smoking related incidents. In other words, getting targeted by the Ukrainians. So let's hope that is the case. Anyway, that's enough from me. That was a jam-packed, full of information military aid video. I hope that you guys find it useful, informative, interesting. Thank you very much for watching and coming to me for your information. Please do like, subscribe and share. Thank you so much for people who've been supporting as members. I forget to say that so often. And thank you for those who have supported on Buy Me a Coffee, links are below, and on PayPal, links are below. Thank you for those who have been so generous. I will thank you personally. I'm so behind on doing so much stuff. Life is just very busy. But thank you for all of your support. Really appreciate it. Take care. Speak to you soon. Toodle pips.